Today we are interviewing Ricky Pickett in her home in Frederick. And I am Barbara Chagan, and Jean Morgan is on the camera. It's the 13th of April, 2015 already. And so I'm going to start out, and we're doing this also for the Louisville Historic Museum, and it's part of our oral history project. So we're very happy to be talking with you today, Ricky, and I'm going to ask you a few questions first to get started.
You bet. I'm excited that we're doing this.
Right. I'd like your full name and your date of birth. And would you please spell your name for us?
Okay. I was born on April 10th, 1947. My name is Ricky, R-I-C-K-Y, Arlene, A-R-L-E-N-E, Madonna, M-A-D-O-N-N-A. I am married now, and my last name, my married name, is Pickett. I'm married to Don Pickett, and that last name is P-I-C-K-E-T-T.
And both of these, the Picketts and Madonnas, are very long-time Louisville area families and have some really interesting history. And we will be also interviewing Don and the Pickett side. So today we are going to sort of stick with the Madonna side, if that's okay.
Sure.
And I'd like also to have your parents' names. And if you know when they were born or where they were born, that's just great.
I think I do.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. My dad is Wilbur Rocco Madonna, and he was born in December 19th, 1917.
Was that in Louisville?
He was born in Louisville at his house right there on Main Street, down the same house that his dad built.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and your mother?
My mother she was born Meredith Glenn Patton, P-A-T-T-E-N. She was born on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, 1925.
And she was also born in Louisville?
She was born in Lafayette.
In Lafayette?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And your father went by Rocco, is that right?
No, my grandfather was Rocco.
Your grandfather.
Yeah, my father. I'm glad you asked that. My father went by Squeak.
All right.
Louisville.
Yes, right.
He even
had to have a nickname.
He even got his public service bill to Squeak Madonna.
You're kidding.
Yeah. And
Really?
And in those days, you didn't need an address.
Yeah.
You just said Squeak Madonna City.
Yeah.
Or Louisville.
But his real name was Wilbur Rocco.
And in his very later years, they decided that he needed a more respectable name, and so he went by Will.
I see.
My brother, his son, still goes by Squeak, even work. His voice message on his phone
says Squeaky.
Squeak Madonna.
Squeak or squeaky? Squeak.
Squeak.
Yeah. But Rocco, did that come then from your great grandfather?
Rocco was my dad's dad, my grandfather. He was Rocco Gregorio Madonna. And doing the genealogy stuff, the Italians, and I know other nationalities do it too. Everybody's named after somebody. And so Rocco's first son was named Eugenio Quirino, and Quirino was his father's name. And Eugenio came from his mother's side. And even the girls were named after grandmothers and on both sides.
So the Italian names were sort of carried down through the...
until we got here. I wasn't named after anybody Italian.
I see, okay.
Although my sister...
But you had several sisters, right?
Yes, and my older sister, Laura, was named after my dad's mother, Loretta. And my sister Jeannie was named after my Uncle Gene. And
so when did the Madonna family come to the United States originally?
My grandpa Rocco and his brother Vincenzo came to the United States the first time in 1897. They were hired by the owner that built the Redstone Castle,
which was
Redstone.
John Osgood.
Yes,
I think.
John
Yeah.
Osgood.
Mm-hmm.
And John Osgood, he wanted authentic, talented European craftsmen to come and build that place. And so I believe, did they use a lot of the stone was from marble there in the quarry right there. Mm-hmm. And my grandpa Rocco was a blacksmith, as was his father and his grandfather and his son.
So Osgood actually sort of went into or contacted somebody in these villages in Italy to bring the craftsmen over.
Yeah, I'm not sure how he found them in such an obscure little village in Italy, but there were a lot of craftsmen there that were very skilled.
Where was this village?
This is Taranto Pallegna, and it is in the Abruzzi area, in the Aventino Valley, and there's a whole string of little villages. And
is that in southern Italy?
It's almost directly east of Rome.
Okay.
So
how do you spell that? The village.
Taranta and Pligna.
There are quite a few towns in Italy with the last Policino. I'm wondering if that's. Do you know what that means?
Yes, Pallegna is a tribe or a clan. Taranta is, they named it after a tarantula. A tarantula is a spider that weaves. That's what their main industry was. They raised sheep. Right there, and they bred them to make the finest wool, and then they would shear the sheep, card the wool, make it into yarn, and they still have one factory there that is just now, occasionally some tourist people want to take a look at it, but I have a blanket from there, but a Taranta blanket is very famous. And so their little mascot thing.
Maybe later we'll have you show us the blanket.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The tarantula is kind of their little. It's in their square in front of the church that they put it into the stone pavers. That everything they built back then, they cut it out of the mountains. You know, Italy is mostly mountains, and when they want to build a building, they just cut it out. So there were a lot of stone carvers there.
And these are mostly the same families, in some way related?
Yeah. Our last visit there, we showed up in town in Taranto Pallegna to go to a family reunion and meet more of the relatives, because we've met quite a few of them. And when we got there were these 5 little old men sitting on the park bench there, looking so cute. And we said, can we take your picture? So they posed, and that was cute and everything. And then we kind of mixed in with them, and then somebody else came and took our picture all together. And we thought, oh, isn't that cute? By the time the end of the week came along, we realized that we would run into one of those men someplace. Almost every day we saw a different one, and we were related to all of them. They were there waiting for us to get there.
They were Madonnas.
The Madonna girls are coming to town, and we're going to have a family reunion.
How exciting!
And, yeah, the mayor was there. I haven't figured a connection with the mayor. I don't know that.
Did you have someone that could translate for you? Or you just
part of the time
mixed it up?
Part of the time, and no matter how much I practice Italian, I don't remember any of it. It just, and even if I did, I could say a word or two or a memorized phrase, but to carry on a conversation, there's just no way.
So the village was mostly Madonna? I mean, historically?
I have a census from 1884, and it lists that there were 516, I forgot the Italian word, chimneys. So that means households.
House, okay.
Okay. 516 households, 1,600 souls. That's how many people.
Yeah.
They were souls.
Yeah.
And of those, the first two most prominent names were just light years ahead of all the rest of them. And that was Merlino, there were 32, and Madonna, there were 23. And
so
the next one was like 10 or something. I mean, it was just a whole lot different.
So other than when your grandfather and his brother came to the U.S., to Colorado, were there other Madonnas that came about the same time?
Eventually, out of the 11 kids that their parents had, 3 of them died at birth, which that's really common in those days in Italy. But the 8 that were left, 5 of the boys came to America. They emigrated. My grandpa and his brother went back to Italy in around 1900, 1901. Well, it must have been around 1900, because then he got married to my grandma that he knew from there.
Oh, okay.
In 1901.
So they got married in Italy, and then came back here.
She's all her ancestors are from the same little village.
What was her name?
Her name was Lauretta Di Marco. It's Lauretta De and capital Marco.
Do you know if the was it Martinellis that were the other Marinos that were the other family?
Yes.
Or most of the
Del
families.
Pizzas, Del Pizzas there too, and they were really close friends, and that's why they built so close to each other in Louisville.
So they pretty much came from that same area, at least.
Same little village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really amazing.
Yeah.
So what happened when they went up to work on the Redstone
They
Castle?
had very nice living accommodations that they built first, I guess. They had entertainment. All of the employees were there, and they'd work all day, and they would play music and dance and stuff at night. I don't know what kind of dancing, but just make merry, just have fun, drink wine, whatever. And my grandpa could fix any musical instrument that wasn't working right, and he could play any instrument he picked up. And he played the accordion. I remember him sitting on the arms of the chair while he played the accordion and entertained the family. And my mother learned to play the accordion because she just thought that was such a neat thing. And my second youngest sister, Nancy, learned to play the accordion when she was
carried it down in the family.
Yeah, 8 or 9 years old, and probably by the time she was 10, she was doing recitals and everything.
Do you have any idea how long they were up in Redstone? And
I'm thinking
Redstone's outside of
a year or two.
Carbondale and into the mountains. And Osgood was the owner of I guess it was steel mill in Pueblo. That's probably where his money came from. But there's coke ovens still up there in Redstone. All the coke ovens that they used, I guess.
Don and I are going to go visit there. Ever since I started looking some of this stuff up, I thought, we've talked about that for years, and now they're doing tours again. And so we're going to go do the tour, because I think that will be a really fun. And
you said that his brother built the lions that were in front of the castle.
Jimmy he carved, besides carving stones to build the thing, any of the decorative stuff he carved, and he did the original 2 big lions that stood in the front. And
then he did
an awful lot of stuff in Boulder, Colorado.
Yeah, and your grandfather did the ironwork and things?
My grandfather did any ornamental iron stuff, gates and railings and all kinds of stuff like that he did.
So how did they get to Louisville from Redstone? What brought them to Louisville?
I think eventually it was the coal mines, the jobs in the coal mines. Now, Grandpa Rocco did not work down in the coal mine all the time, but I do believe he went down and shoed the mules and fixed tools and stuff like that. But I think there was a blacksmith shop at the mine, and I have it somewhere. I'm not sure what all of the mines are that he worked in.
Did his brother work in the mines also? Or?
No. No. Uncle Jimmy went to Boulder, and he did the mosaic flagstone sidewalk in front of the Boulder courthouse, and he did all kinds of carved the big insignia things that were on the fronts of all the fraternity and sorority houses, and any kind of carved statues and stuff like that. He did that.
So the court, that would have been the courthouse that replaced the original and was built in about 1933. About 1933 when it was built.
Okay.
The original was 18 something.
And did they tear that down?
It burned.
Oh, okay, it burned. Mm-hmm. Well, and obviously this is not going to burn because it's made out of stone.
Right. Yeah. So that's probably the one that he was working on, would be 1933.
And he designed all of those walkways and the patterns, and then he cut anything that was, intricate.
Any of the stonework
himself. And we heard stories that the group of men were building the sidewalk, and they had a disagreement, and somebody didn't like the quality of somebody else's work, and everybody went home, and a couple of them, my dad's Uncle Jimmy and some other guys, went and took it all apart and redid a whole section of it because they said it wasn't quality.
While the others were gone.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful story.
So now the whole sidewalk that was there is not still there. Because when they expanded the courthouse and made it bigger, there was a big controversy because they were just going to tear that sidewalk out and get rid of it. And people went, no, that's history. So they kind of worked around it. So
they saved some.
Yeah, there's still some.
So it's still there.
Yes.
And your grandfather, he was a blacksmith then in Louisville? And
yes. He made tools and pots and pans. Oh, I should show you that up there.
You're right. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, all kinds of cookware and pots and pans and household things. He made all of the chisels for Uncle Jimmy to do his stone carving. And I have a collection of chisels that are just all different kinds of bits, the ends of them. And he made Bitzel irons for lots of people in Louisville. He made beautiful spaghetti cutters that my brother has carried down the tradition and made one for each of his sisters and copied it exactly. And I was told that my grandpa made the original communion rail at St. Louis Catholic Church. They've torn that down a long time ago. Yeah. When Father Harold was here, he was a woodworker.
But you said there were some places in Louisville that you could still see.
Now that was his son, my Uncle Gene, my dad's brother. Gene was, he did a lot of ornamental iron stuff like gates and railings and that sort of thing.
Carried on the family.
He did, yeah. He was a Louisville City Councilman. He was a volunteer firefighter. He just was just in the middle of everything in Louisville. He was very.
And that was Jimmy?
That was Eugene. That was Dad's brother. So Rocco's oldest son.
Okay.
The son that was born in Italy and came here with his mom.
Oh, all right.
Okay. Because Grandpa came back in 1904 after going home and getting married. And they had Uncle Gene, and then they had another little baby, Americo, and then before Americo was born, Grandma was pregnant, but the second little boy wasn't born yet. Grandpa left for the United States, for America, to build him a home. And then Americo only lived 4.5 months. After he died in 1905, Grandma and Uncle Gene got on a ship and came and joined him here.
And was the house built?
The house was...
Where was it?
I'm not sure about the address. I should
This
have
is
looked
the
that up.
main street?
Yes, in the 500 block on the corner, just 1 block south of the Blue Parrot.
I have 557, but we're not positive.
Yeah, I think that might be right.
And your grandfather built that house.
He built that house, but it was wood then. Right now, somebody over the years has totally covered the outside with brick.
Okay,
But
so the house is still there.
It's still there. And originally it had no front porch. And then Grandpa added a front porch on it before I was born. I don't know when it happened, but early pictures, it has no porch on the front, but then it had a really nice, the big old houses with the big porch where lots of people could sit.
Was your father born there?
My father was born right there in that house. Yeah, as were all of their kids. I have a bill from Community Hospital, I think, a Boulder hospital. $37. Grandma went in after all of the kids were born. She got pregnant again, and she went to the hospital to have this one because at that point she was getting older and it was a little scary. And she went to the hospital, and the delivery is just, unbelievable cheap. The whole total bill was $37.
$37. Of course, that might have seemed like a lot to them. Too.
Well, it was then, yeah. But that
and the baby died.
Yeah. So my dad is the youngest of the surviving kids.
All right.
Yeah.
So the house on Main, were there? You weren't. Where were you born? Had they already?
I was actually. Well, Mom and Dad were a little more traditional, and they took Mom to the hospital this time in Boulder. Yeah. So we were all born in Boulder. Dr. Cassidy delivered all the girls, and Dr. Bach delivered the boy.
See.
So they kind of said, "Oh, well."
Those were really the two Louisville doctors at the time.
Well, and they said if we want boys, we have to go back to Dr. Bach. But we lived until I was, I think, 5 years old. We lived in the house that Mike Kalachi owned that house, and he rented it to my parents until he was headed back to Italy and to find a bride there after his original wife Mary had passed away, and he was widowed for a while. And so he went back to Italy to find a wife, and he sent them a telegram and said. So
then Mike wanted the house back.
He said I'll be home in 3 months.
And was that on Main Street also?
That was It was. It's not right next door to where the Elks is right now. There's a house in between, and then that one. Yeah, cute little house, garage in the back, chicken coop in the back. That years later it became a little apartment for my mom's brother. My grandmother's brother. Yeah.
So what did your parents do then if they had to move?
They bought land at the very end of Grant Avenue.
Grant.
And Dad bought a dump truck and all kinds of equipment, and they built a house. Their kids were, my brother Squeak was 6 months old. Jeannie was 2.5 years old. I was 4.5 years old. Laura was 6.5 years old because we were 2 years apart.
2 years apart.
Mom and Dad called that the Catholic rhythm method. That was birth control in those days, You just didn't have them,
So did a lot of the family work on that house, or how did it get built?
Yeah. My Uncle Queen.
Do you remember the address exactly?
1328 Grant.
1328, okay.
And it looks very different now. It's yellow. And it's got a huge,
but it's still there.
Yes, and
Just
it's got
like
a huge yellow
it's amazing.
two-story garage behind it.
Uh-huh.
And talk about filling up the lots.
Right, a lot of them do that these days.
There was
too.
a sidewalk between our house and Autry's house next door, and when the kids were all in the bathtub taking baths in the evening, we would talk to each other, holler back and forth, and the moms always said, well, if you ever need an extra bar of soap or a towel or something, we could just toss it across, because the windows were just, just a sidewalk between them, boy. It was really close.
Yeah.
But
the lots were pretty small, so.
They were, but it always seemed so big because.
Sure. Well, your house wasn't that big
either. There was
a
whole field next to it. And we thought the house wasn't very big, but when you go inside now, the rooms were so huge, and all of the floors were hardwood. But Dad and Mom put carpet on all of them because that's what you did in those days. It's quieter, it's warmer, that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so after my parents passed away, we sold that house to a man who wanted to fix it up, and he didn't gut it. Like you see houses get really just totally ripped down to the 2x4s. He said, this place is built like a fortress. He said, I'm not tearing anything up. He refinished all the floors. He painted the walls. He repainted the kitchen cabinets white. My dad had built the most unbelievable kitchen. In the corner where some people today have a Lazy Susan, in one corner, he had drawers that the drawers went clear back into the corner, and the back of the drawer went like this into the corner, and the front of the drawer went like this, so that it fit in the corner. You just open it like a regular drawer. It was just amazing. He had way before you see all those little tilt-out things in front of the sink.
Yes.
He did that, and he also. If you opened the cupboard door under the kitchen sink, he had a little trap door that opened. Mom never had a dustpan. She just sweep it into that trap door, and there was a box in the rafters downstairs that they would empty, ever so often. And so it was real easy to sweep the floor. Everything, you just sweep it under the cupboard there.
Father was a very talented man, wasn't he?
Yeah. And one of the corner cabinets, he took the sheet of this, I think it was plywood, and he scored on even intervals, and then he soaked it in water and bent it so that the cabinet door went like this in the cupboard, in the corner. And he cut out little fancy gingerbread kind of stuff, and the window over the kitchen sink. So many times Mom's in the kitchen and she's standing there staring at the wall or the corner or something, and you don't really have a view. That picture window was bigger than that picture window. I mean, it was 7 feet by 5 or 6 feet. I mean, it was huge. So standing at the kitchen sink, she could look out in the field where the kids always played out in the field and up at the irrigation ditch and all that kind of stuff. And
your father went to the university too, didn't he?
He did. He went to University of Colorado. He was married when he did. He took classes, for 8 years before he finally graduated with an accounting degree. And during that time, he was working construction. And when he graduated, he said, I don't want to work indoors at a desk. He said, I love being outside. I like to create and invent things. He was really a very creative
You told about some games that he
had
invented. Your mom was pretty talented,
was a born
too.
teacher. And when she got her certification, first she taught for Head Start in Louisville. And then she opened her own preschool. And it was called Mother Goose Preschool. And she did it right there at the house. And Dad would build anything she would come up with, he would build it. And he made some of the very first electronic games where you had, she had sheets that she could interchange, and it would have words or colors or something that you want to match one to the other. And so when you put a lead on one of them and then this one, it would light up if it was correct. It wouldn't light up if it wasn't the right answer.
Yeah.
And Mom liked to do teaching colors by...
Did he ever patent any of those things?
No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He just, he invented so many things so fast, and so he was just always at it. And if somebody else had an idea, he would copy it, and, just his friends, because the people who lived in that neighborhood, he had the Del Pitts guys right behind him. So those are countrymen. Those were one of the families that moved from Toronto to Plano at about the same time as my grandparents did. And so down on Main Street, they lived about 4 blocks apart. But up on Grant, we lived back to back with them. So Tony Del Pitts and Frank Del Pitts lived next door to each other, right behind my parents' house.
Okay. What about the Madonnas? You're related to a lot of the Madonnas in Louisville? Or?
The Madonnas in Louisville, there's the Joe Madonna, John Madonna, John Bugdust, who's still alive. They were distant cousins, and they were very close. I think that happens. You come from the same country, you came from your ancestors from the same village, whether your bloodline is exactly that close, you're cousins. You're somehow related to them. And so sometimes people would say, "Oh, are you related to Pete Madonna?" I'd say, "Well, yeah, but that's the other Madonna family, because there's a lot of them that were related to each other." The 5 brothers, my grandpa and his 4 brothers that moved here, they all moved to Louisville for a short term. And then he had a youngest brother, Camilo, Uncle Charlie, moved to California. He worked for MGM Studios, and he created things like, we've got pictures of, this was before computers. They needed a scene that was a burned out forest. He made wrought iron trees, and they hauled in the black cinder looking stuff to put it on the side of the mountain, and that was, for the scene. And so he made lots and lots of iron stuff. He was also a blacksmith, very gifted. And then Uncle Jimmy, his brother Vincenzo, moved to Boulder and did all the stone carving. His brother Antonio, Tony went to North Denver, but he worked on the project at the Boulder Courthouse with Vincenzo. But I think he was a stonemason, bricklayer, stonecutter kind of guy too. And Uncle Ralph, I can't remember what he did, something in Denver, also in North Denver. And so they still, 4 of the 5 stayed right in Colorado, and, within a half hour's drive of each other. And so Sundays, everybody came to Grandma and Grandpa's for homemade Italian food, spaghetti or raviolis or polenta or gnocchis or something, and lots of different meat and bread and all kinds of stuff. So it was a big meal that took all day. You went to church and then you went to Grandma's.
Grandmother cooked pretty much that whole thing, or Chris probably had a lot of
She
help,
cooked most of it.
Really?
My mother wanted so badly to learn how to cook Italian, because she wasn't Italian. And so she would ask Grandma, would you teach me how to do that? Grandma would say, sure. And what time should I be there? And she'd tell her. And she'd get there, and she'd let Mom help her cut the spaghetti, or
but it had already been made.
Do the ravioli or the gnocchis with her thumb, or assemble the raviolis. But she didn't teach her the recipes. I think she thought that Dad wouldn't go over there and have a little supper with him before he came home every night. if she had the recipes,
Oh, I see. Right.
So Mom had to learn them other people in the family.
Yeah. What was your mother's heritage?
Lots of Irish, but she was Scotch, Welsh, Irish, and Dutch. More Irish than other things.
And when did her family come here? Do you know?
The Crawfords, I think, were Scotch, and they came. I don't know. That was. I haven't done that genealogy that far back. My aunt Claudine did the genealogy for the Crawfords and back like that. They were from when I knew them. They lived in Longmont, and they had a farm in Lafayette for a while. They had a dry cleaners in Longmont. They did a lot of different things. And then my grandpa was hurt in a bleachers caved in, and it paralyzed him, so he was wheelchair bound. And
that was in Longmont.
That was in Longmont.
Happened?
Yeah.
Was your mother born in Longmont or Lafayette or?
I think she was born in Lafayette.
Mm-hmm. You have a number of pictures here.
I do.
Are there some that would be appropriate to?
Well, I think so.
To hold up at this time while we've got the family heritage.
Now, does that show or does that have a glare? Is that good? Okay.
How does that look, Jean?
It's good.
Okay. This is my grandma and grandpa, Rocco and Lauretta, or she went by Laura. They came. Grandpa multiple times and Grandma finally in 1905. And this is their picture when they got married.
That's her wedding picture.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Is that
Yeah,
that shows good enough without a glare? Okay. All right. When they see, this doesn't fit very well. When they had their family. Sorry.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
When they had their family, originally they had the first two kids in Italy, two boys, Eugenio and Americo. And Americo died when he was 4.5 months old. So Rocco came to Louisville, bought land to build a house for his family and wife to come here and join him. And
so these were his children after they moved here, or
no? Those first two.
This was still in Italy.
That was in Italy, and so in 1905, Grandma and Uncle Gene, their oldest son, came to America and came to Louisville. She spoke no English. Rode in the the passage in the ship with other people from that area, because people were immigrating to America from that little village like crazy. Infant mortality rate was just unbelievable. My grandma Laura's parents had 15 children. 5 lived to be adults, and 2 immigrated to the United States. So they weren't left with very many kids for such a large family, and that happened a lot.
That was before immunization and before a lot of health care
and travel was hard.
Care.
This was up in the mountains, little villages up in the mountains, and right now when we go visit, it's like 10, 20 minutes maybe at the most from village to village. But when you're walking or riding a horse, or or in a wagon, you're a little isolated.
Yeah.
And something would happen where some disease would go into a village, and it would wipe out bunches of the people. Mm-hmm. A whole bunch of them would die.
Even in the mining towns here, originally there was a lot of that.
We visited up in
the Caribou Cemetery had whole families of children that.
Yeah, we went to Walsenburg to the Huerfano County Museum, and and they showed us records of family deaths, and some families would bury 3 or 4 members of their family on the same day when some illness would go through. You know, just getting influenza would kill people then, because they really didn't know what they were dealing with. They didn't have doctors in every one of those little places. Louisville was very lucky. We had 2 doctors.
Right.
And you didn't need an appointment.
Yeah.
You just walked in. And if you were real sick, you called them up and they came to your house.
There. Yes, been told that. Did that happen to do you remember your house or any place where they just came out?
Dr. Cassidy. In fact, Dr. Cassidy gave Mom a ride to the hospital one of the times when she was going to have a baby, because he was driving past and she was out washing windows.
I hope it was a girl.
Get down from that ladder.
I hope it was a girl and he was going to deliver anyway.
It was.
Any other pictures that...
so anyway, this little guy that looks like a little girl, that's my dad. He was the youngest.
Oh, okay.
And many of the Europeans, I don't know who else, little kids, they were kind of unisex. They looked like little girls. They didn't cut their hair. They wore kind of clothes that were just cute. They were baby clothes. And until they were about 5, they didn't get their hair cut. And he had the most gorgeous long curls. Yeah.
But you couldn't tell whether it was a girl or boy for
you really
quite a while
couldn't.
then.
Yeah. But anyway, so this is Uncle Gene, who came from Italy, and all the rest of the kids were born in the U.S. in their home.
Yeah, he does. He looks grown there.
Yeah, he's older than the others by 4 or 5 years, something like that. Yeah. Okay.
It's wonderful that you have all those pictures.
All right. So the next picture is my parents, and they didn't have a wedding picture, so we kind of made one up of their 2 senior high school pictures. They both graduated from Louisville High School. Is that going to show? Or
this way.
Is the light up there?
Can you move the picture in front?
Getting a little reflection.
Oh. How's that?
Do you know the years that they graduated?
Ooh. Mom graduated in 43. I don't know. I have that.
It's still during the Second World War then. And was she about the time she graduated?
Let's see. If she was born in 25. Yeah, that would be about right.
And he was
7 years older than
7 years older. Did he serve in the...
He did not. He had that was a really touchy subject with him. He wanted to go. He tried to volunteer to go. He had a mitral valve misfunction, a mitral valve prolapse, and they wouldn't accept him. He was 4F. And all of his friends were going, and it was hurtful to him. And so he worked for as a clerk in Seattle in some military defense agency to support the war. And so they both, Mom went to St. Louis school and Dad went to Louisville Elementary, but being 7 years apart, they were not in those schools at the same time, and they weren't in high school at the same time either. The way they met each other was, my dad was very handy from the time he was young, and Mom's mother had married a second time after Mom's dad died, and she married Fred Eberharder from Louisville, and Grandma Eberharder was pretty famous in Louisville, and she had the house where the Chamber of Commerce is right now.
Oh, okay.
And she had him there doing some repairs on the porch and different things, and he was fixing things. And Grandma Eberharder said to my mom, she said, "Now she said, there's a good husband for you. He's going to support you. He'll take good care of you. He's handy,
working hard.
He can do everything, and he's still young. He's a young boy, and he's not out just messing around. He's working." And so, she would keep inviting him back to do work there so that he was around a lot.
And it worked.
And it worked, yeah. So they ended up dating, and yeah.
So your mother was Catholic and your father was not, is that?
Oh, no, they were both Catholic.
They were both Catholic.
They were both Catholic, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Well, coming from Italy,
yes,
most Italians come from Italy as Catholics. Whether they stay that way or not isn't always the case today. But yeah, even the people who didn't keep going to church daily.
So you were raised Catholic, and you went to St. Louis School.
I went to St. Louis School for 8 years. They didn't have kindergarten in those days. You had to go to the public school to go to kindergarten, I guess, or maybe they didn't have it there even then. I don't know. But yeah, I went.
Yeah, they may not have even had it.
The first 4 of us, and then the first 4 of the kids were all 2 years apart, and we went to the Catholic school there. Then there was a very long spell in there, and then they had 2 more, 2 more girls, and
so the nuns were your teachers, and
I had Sister Laverne for 5 of the 8 years. I had her my first year in 3rd grade. I discussed this with some of my classmates recently. We don't know if there was. I think there were 3 grades in that classroom. The desks were all hooked together in a train, and at the very back of the room there was a chair.
Yes.
To match, to be the mate to the desk that was back there, and then at the very front, almost against Sister's desk, was the seat, and she would just keep that seat flipped up so that she could squeeze through. But you couldn't walk around back at all. I mean, it was just wall to wall.
The whole room was full.
It was just very full. There had to be 50-some kids in there. She was 22 years old. She just got her teaching degree.
And she had as many as 50 children.
And she had control. Let me tell you, we walked in straight lines. We didn't talk in the hallway. You kept your arms down to your sides, You go out and play on the playground. And, the kinds of things you hear about kids doing today on the playground, I'm sure there were some ornery kids, but boy, nothing like that. We really, really were supervised. And
did she go out at the playground
yes,
also?
Yes, she did. She taught us how to play softball in her habit. The nuns were from O'Fallon, Missouri, and they were great baseball fans. And so that's when you got past about 4th grade, then you got on the other side of the playground, and we played softball every day at recess. And we had the playground equipment was on the south, between the church and the school. There was a slide that was really, really tall and went down real steep and fast. There was teeter-totters, which lots of people, my younger daughter got hurt on that teeter-totter. There was swings with the really long chains that by the time my kids got there, if you held on tight, those chains were just sharp because they were worn.
From all those years.
Yeah. And a merry-go-round. And that
I was going to ask if there was a merry-go-round.
And it was all on asphalt. There was nothing soft at the bottom of any of those. And one of the kids, I can't remember which of them, one of the boys in my class fell off the top of the slide. Hit the ground there on that asphalt and just laid there for the longest time. And they called the rescue squad and took him away, and he was fine. He didn't break anything. It was just amazing.
Who were some of your classmates that you remember or you have stayed friends with?
We're having our 50th class reunion this year. Oh. And so everybody's kind of reconnected just a few years ago after the last one what we did, and they've kind of stayed that way. A group of the guys, Tom Moodrock, Larry Martella, Roger Delforge, who else? I don't know. Anyway, those 4 stand out. They get together regularly, and in fact, they have resurrected the band that they had as seniors in high school. I think they named it the Amazing Toads. and they're gonna play.
They're gonna play for your reunion
at our 50th class reunion. The girls that get together, we have lunch once a month. She was Janice Brimble. She married Tom Mudrock in our class. Kathy Merzlikar, who is now Kathy Martella, Larry's wife, was in the class 1 year ahead of us. And Denise Youngman, who was Denise Beranek, is Larry's cousin who lives across the street, who was in our class. And Judy, she was Judy Tassone, and she's now Judy DeNovelis. Judy and I were born on either side of her grandparents' house. The little house on Main Street that I lived in when I was real little, it was our house, and then Grandma Jenny and Grandpa Jim Tassone, and Judy and her family next to that. And then several years, when we moved into the house that Mom and Dad built, Judy's parents built a house on the other side of the football field, the old Louisville High School football field. Well, we were behind it on the west side, and Judy's house is still there. They're both there. Judy's house was kind of north and east, and right now their driveway just separates from the school grounds, because it's still there. And Mina, Judy's mom and dad, Mina is her mom. They moved her to the Legacy just recently. She's 99. And Judy's daughter, Jessica, and her family have moved into the house. And they're real excited about being back in Louisville.
That's one of the great things about Louisville, are the families.
But Judy and I, after yelling back and forth between her grandparents' yard, then it became the football field. In those days, there was no fence around the football field. So we'd stand on our back porch and holler at each other, and then we'd run across and meet at the football field. And I was part of their family, it seemed like. She had no sisters. She only had brothers. And they went to El Dorado Springs every Friday night. They went to her older brother Vince's basketball games and football games at Mines. And so I always got to go along as the other sister. And so we were really close.
They go to El Dorado to swim or to dance, or?
They went to El Dorado every Friday night. The Tassone family, the Giacomo family, that whole big group, they would meet up there and have a big, fabulous picnic.
Okay.
And the kids would go, Mina would take the kids up earlier in the day, and we'd swim all day at the pool. We'd go have the picnic, and the guys would come after work and join the ladies there and have the picnic. And then we would go down and swim in the dark in the pool with the lights on until 10 o'clock at night when they would close it.
Did they have lifeguards at night?
Oh, yes.
Uh-huh.
And
the pool was
lit
in
up? Those days, I didn't realize it, but my husband Don was one of those lifeguards.
Oh, wow. So that, you hadn't met him yet. But you were in high school then, was this before high school?
No, that was before I was in high school.
Before high school.
Yeah, I was a little girl and he was a high school kid.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
Our parents were friends when they built houses, because Dad would go help Earl on his house, and Earl would come down, and so they were just friends from Louisville, and I think Dorothy and Earl and Mom and Dad square danced together for a while, and so it was natural that the two families knew each other, but the age difference kept us from anything going. But then when Don came home from the service, from the Marine Corps, my sister Laura, who's 2 years older than I am, had married his younger brother.
Oh.
And so Don invited me to go.
We're getting the Picketts and the Madonnas together here.
That's right. That's right. And in fact, Don's brother and sister are twins, and his sister married our cousin, Dale Eberharder.
Okay.
And we joked about it, said, well, Louisville was a really small town. Everybody knew everybody, and you were related to most of them, so you had to find one that you weren't related too closely to, you know?
Right.
So we joke about, you know, the family tree is...
Couldn't have the first cousin, but maybe
yeah, you can't
fourth
have
or fifth or
right,
whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they weren't related.
Yeah.
But
it was,
you know,
really,
and I hear that a lot, is that sisters married brothers, or a sister and brother would marry a sister and brother. That was really common in Louisville in those days.
So when did you graduate from
I
Louisville
graduated
High
from
School?
Louisville High School in 1965. Yeah, Don graduated in 57.
Did you go on to school or work or?
I went to CSU.
Okay.
When I was a freshman at Louisville High School, our PE teacher was the neatest lady. Her name was Sally Ware, and we jokingly talked about her. We called her olive oil because she was built like that, you know, kind of skinny, and she was very uncoordinated. For a PE teacher, I thought that was really funny, and I thought, you know what? I'm not real coordinated. And she decided one day when we had a day off, she took a whole group of us girls to CSU to visit the women's PE department at CSU. And I fell in love with the place. I wanted to go there. From the time I was a freshman in high school, I was going to go there and be a PE teacher. And that's what I did. And I loved it. It was great. But I got married right after my freshman year. And so my sophomore year, we lived in Loveland, and I drove to CSU in Fort Collins, and Don drove to Rocky Flats, which was a long ways. He would come to Louisville and pick up his carpool. And a lot of Louisville, you know, Judy DeNavos, Judy Tassone rode with him, and Tony Del Pitts and Frank Del Pitts.
They were all working at Rocky Flats.
They all worked
then?
at Rocky Flats, and Don would drive them. And so he did that one semester, and then we bought a mobile home and moved to Lafayette. And I went to CU, and then last year then I finished at CSU.
When you two started dating, he came back from the Marines, and
it was a funny story because my brother was babysitting for Laura and Mike's two little boys. And instead of paying him money, they said, well, when we go out to the lake, to the Baseline Lake, we'll just take you along and treat you to a day of water skiing. Oh, okay. So I got home from college, and my brother's getting ready to go. I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going water skiing. I said, I want to go. And my dad, he said, well, sure, you can go. And then I was embarrassed. And I
even
said,
if your brother didn't want to take you on.
Well, and whether Don would even want to take me.
Yeah.
You know, Don was coming to pick him up.
Oh, okay.
Because he wasn't even old enough to drive. And so I said, no, I'm not invited, you know. And so I just went off and went to my room or did something else. And pretty soon, Don's out front honking the horn and got his Jeep. And my brother went running out, and boy, my dad ran right after him. He said, you don't care if Ricky goes too, do you? What's he going to say? So Don says, no, that's fine. So Dad came running down, and he's grabbing towels and all kinds of stuff, and he says, here, go. And he pushes me out there, and I was really embarrassed, but I wanted to go so bad that I did. And that night, after we skied all day, Don took my brother and I to the Three Coins for a Coke afterwards, and invited us to come back the next day. And I was going to summer school, so every weekend I would come home, and I went water skiing every weekend all summer. And by Labor Day, we were engaged.
So with Baseline Lake, anyone could go there at that time, or
no? It's been a private lake since I think 1957. It was a private lake. Maybe before that, a group got it that it didn't work out with. They didn't take good care of it or something. But yeah, this club that we belong to right now at Baseline Lake, Don has been a member since 1958.
Wow.
And yeah, it's
We'll be
it's
talking.
been a big
We'll
part
be
of our
talking to
life.
him and hear all about
Yeah,
the Picketts
yeah.
and everything later too.
Our two girls were raised out there. You know, if it's even close to summertime, that's where we are.
Oh, that's great.
We camped and played in the water and did all kinds of stuff.
Did you have a boat out there? Or?
Yeah, we've always had a boat.
Yeah.
He came with a boat. We jokingly say, you know, people say, "Wow, how do you get on Baseline Lake?" And I said, "Well, I found a guy that wasn't married, and I married him.
Right.
That's how I got there." On our 25th wedding anniversary, my mom finally told me that the summer that we were dating, Dad said, "Well," he said, "when the skiing's done, that'll be the end of that, you know."
Oh, right.
This romance will be over when the skiing's done. And when Mom told me that, I laughed and I said, "Well, it's not done yet. We're still doing it."
So when were you married?
In 1966, December of 1966. And Mom said, "Don't get married right before Christmas." It was the 17th. She said, "If you get married right before Christmas, I'll always forget your wedding anniversary because it's too close to Christmas."
But you did.
I said, "I have to do it while I'm on break between classes, between semesters,
So so
that we can have a honeymoon."
You were still going to CSU when you were a freshman.
Yeah, I was a sophomore then by that time. Yeah.
So did you ever teach PE or?
I did. I taught at Louisville Elementary and Lafayette Elementary.
Oh, really?
Where they didn't have gyms in the schools in those days. So the lunchroom was where you taught. And so Jim Sanger was the boys' PE teacher, and I was the girls' PE teacher. And we would teach all morning. I'm trying to remember which way it went. I'm thinking we taught in the morning at Lafayette Elementary, and then when it got to be lunchtime, we didn't have a place to do it. And so we would have a nice long lunch hour, and then we would go to Louisville and teach there. And the classes were huge. It was like they would take multiple classrooms and put them together in there, and so there were lots and lots of kids. And Jim really didn't. He wanted to be a football coach at Centaurus, and so he had to have a job in the district too. And so he was really more interested in the football coaching, and he would say, "Can you watch the boys for a while?" And he'd go out in the hall and visit with somebody and come back in and go, "My goodness." And you know, when I got hired to do that job, it was the day after graduation, the only interview I did, and I went and sat down and talked to him, and I'd been born and raised there, and I was a PE major and had a certificate, and they didn't ask me if I had ever seen an elementary PE class or been in one. I never was.
There was no internship or anything like that.
There was no elementary PE in Louisville, where I went to school. When I went to CSU, we learned to teach junior high and high school. And so, boy, I had a lot of research to do that summer before it got time for school to start, because I really had never seen an elementary PE class.
Did you have any help? Well, you had awfully big groups of
No, we had
children.
no aides.
Yeah.
It was Jim and I. And sometimes he'd take the boys and I'd take the girls, and we'd go play in the big sticker patch in the back of the school. There was no grass, lots and lots of devilhead thorns. Anything that had a ball, the balls were they wouldn't hold air after one class. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
So that's where you had to play if you're going
That's
to
where
play
we had to be.
softball or
They
something
had
like that.
beautiful grass lawn on the front of the school, and the principal said, "You can't play on that. You'll wreck it. It won't."
You'll mess up the lawn.
Yeah, he wanted the lawn to look nice, so we couldn't play there.
Was this at Louisville?
It was at Louisville Elementary. Yeah, in 1969. Yeah. And my sister Nancy was in 4th grade. She was in one of my classes. She always said, "You tried so hard not to play favorites that I never got picked to do anything."
Probably true, because you didn't. Yeah.
Well, I didn't want to make it look like I was just going to have my little sister be my assistant. But we did.
Have you? How long did you teach?
my student teaching was at Southern Hills Junior High, and that was a semester, and I taught 1 year.
Mhm.
And then I said, okay, I'm 24 years old. I want to have a family. It's time. And Dawn and I decided that we weren't going to have kids for somebody else to raise. So when I got pregnant, then that was it.
So tell me
Then I
about your
taught-
family. How?
I taught adult education for
okay.
the school district then. So I taught tennis lessons and supervised volleyball games in the gym.
So you stayed in that,
evenings.
yeah.
So I stayed
Yeah.
at that.
Yeah.
And
this was when your family was young?
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And Dawn and I have 2 girls, Susie and Carrie, and they were raised at Baseline Lake and at all kinds of sporting things. They were in sports, did tennis and volleyball, and Susie went to state in tennis, and her team went to state in volleyball her senior year. And,
Were they going to the Louisville schools?
they went to, Susie started at St. Louis School, but they didn't have any nuns left, and there was some controversy about a priest there that was making it kind of rough, so she moved to the Louisville Elementary, where she had done kindergarten anyway. And then Carrie just started at Louisville Elementary. And then they went, what was really fun is when they went to the middle school, because by then Louisville High School had become Louisville Middle School, they could just walk, we were living on Jefferson, and they could just walk out the door and cross the football field, and they were at school. So it was very nice to have them be so close.
Where on Jefferson did you live?
We lived at 1501 Jefferson. It was also across the street from the football field.
It's very close to
It was there
school.
was what my mother and dad could stand in the kitchen window, that big picture window at the sink, and watch if we were home or not. You know, if we drove in the driveway and opened the front door, the phone would ring because they would know we were home because they saw us come home. And when the kids were little, they would run. That was just a field of weeds in those days, and they would run. I would stand on the front porch in the driveway, and Mom would stand on her back porch, and the little girls would go toddling across the field, and we'd watch them, and then Mom would walk across the street to hold their hands across, to cross the street then, and so it was really fun to have them so close.
Was your mother still teaching at that time?
Yes. In fact, Susie went to Mother Goose Preschool.
Oh, really?
She was younger than most of the kids, because I got to be Mom's assistant, and so Susie got to do things. I remember finally she got old enough that she could use scissors, and we realized that she had never even tried it because she was so little when she started. Mom always, or I did, always cut her stuff out because we didn't want her to do the scissors. And then all of a sudden we're going, oh wait, she's getting behind the other kids. But yeah, by the time Susie got in school and Carrie came along, there's 4 years difference between our girls, and there was no Mother Goose Preschool anymore. And so some girlfriends who had kids the same age and I got together and we formed a co-op preschool. And so that co-op preschool went on for a few years after our kids got out of it. But
was it in your home or where?
Yeah, we had eight little kids. Larry Martella's son Brian, and Don Cummings, who was in our class also. His son Tony, no, not Tony, Kelly, and my friend Connie. And her little girl Christine. So we just two mothers would teach at one of their homes, each week or each time. We had it on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So it would be my week. It would be at my house one time and at Connie's house the other time because we were partners. And then the next week it was at 2 other places. And Brian's mom, Kathy, worked, and Rosie, Larry's mom, Grandma Rosie, was the babysitter, and so she was the teacher. And she was the most fun teacher.
Really?
For snacks, instead of buying a snack, she would always make something with the kids. And I remember her, she was really good at, she would make pancakes in the shapes of animals for the kids. And all kinds of homemade kind of things. And so that was really fun. And she always did parties.
She's a Martella?
Rosie Martella,
Rosie
right.
Martella.
That was Rosie and Albert Martella were Larry's parents, and they lived on, what is that, Lincoln? Just about a half a block up from the Catholic school. And so Rosie and her sister, Louise Schozer, were like permanent room mothers. Even after their kids were out of school, they still were at at St. Louis school all the time. They fixed parties for the kids. They'd take them on field trips, everything. They just were very involved. And Rosie was clear till she died. I think Louise was too.
When did your mother die?
Mom died in 2002, just right after Labor Day, September 5th. And she had cancer. She had cancer 3 different times. And she always told us, she said, I'm not going to fret about it. I'm not going to worry about it. But she said, chances are I will, too. My grandmother died of cancer. My mother died of cancer when I was 15 years old. So she said, I will probably have cancer. And she said, it's okay. And she was really never scared of it. And she was 62 years old when she had breast cancer and had a mastectomy. Bounced back and was just full of life. And then 7 years later, she had lung cancer. And they removed half a lung. And after that, she was really beat down. And she was trying to give away her jewelry and, things. And I said, no. You didn't die. It's time to live again. And so our daughter Carrie took her to the gym. She said, let's go work out. You get healthy again. Because Mom always exercised. She would get on the floor in front of the TV and watch Jack LaLanne and do the exercises with Jack LaLanne. And all the kids would do it too. Yeah. And she always exercised. And she always fought her weight. She was beautiful and slender through the first 4 kids. And then as she got older, she broke her leg once, and she did some things, that slowed her down, and then she got heavy. But after she had that surgery and removed half a lung, she and Carrie, and then pretty soon it was she and Dad, were going to the gym 3 nights a week. And they liked to go when the people who worked, the young people who worked all day, they were there because the young people would go, wow, you guys are working out so hard. That's so neat, And there were a couple of couples there that kind of befriended them. They would go to their house and fix things for them and take them to dinner and invite them to go to their grandchildren's recitals and all kinds of stuff. They had just amazing, close friends. They called them their angels. Yeah. So they were.
Where was the gym at the
Louisville Rec Center?
At the Rec Center.
Yeah. Yeah. My dad, after Mom passed away, was such a regular there that he would stay until they locked up and the employees would go out and they'd walk him to his car because he didn't want to go home to an empty house.
Yeah.
And so they would walk him out there, and about one time in every 3 or 4, he'd search all over for his keys, and he didn't have his keys. And so then they'd let him back in, and he'd call me, and I'd go to his house and get his keys and go
come over and meet him.
Up, and come and meet him, and then he wouldn't go home. He didn't want to go home to an empty house, so he would go out to Albertsons and King Soopers and Safeway and talk to the people who were working with the produce and stocking shelves and stuff. And that's when he would get all the cans with the dents and the no labels, and the produce that was just kind of right there, because they would give it to him, or it would be so cheap, unbelievable. And occasionally he'd call me from one of those places and say, I can't find my keys. So I finally had a set of keys made that I kept at my house, so I didn't have to go to his house and find more keys.
Yeah.
But growing up, the keys always stayed in the car in the ignition. You didn't have to
just,
put,
no,
yeah, you
just-
didn't lock
just
your
left
car,
everything.
and you didn't put
Yeah.
the keys anyplace.
And that's what he was used to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our house that when Don and I moved to Louisville, in what was that? That was in 60. No, it was in 1970. We moved to Louisville and bought a little house that had been moved in from one of the mines on Lafarge, 1021 Lafarge, and it was owned by Carmen and Ann Romano, and who owned the theater, the Rex Theater, and so we paid them rent, and no, I just lost my train of thought. I do that a lot these days.
You talk about keys being in
Oh,
the
okay.
invitation.
That house had no key. It had a skeleton key. And it just stayed in the lock all the time, just for decoration. But we would even go on vacation and leave the house unlocked. Because Louisville was safe. It was just, everybody knew everybody. If you were walking home from school and you fell and skinned your knee, the little old lady who was in the house right where you fell would come out and take you in and clean you up and give you some cookies and milk and call your mom and say she'll be a few minutes. And that's the way Louisville was then. And if you were doing something you shouldn't, they would call your mom and tell her that too. So you didn't get away with anything. Everybody knew what was going on all the time.
Do your daughters live around here?
Well, the reason we moved away from Louisville was Don's parents, who had lived in Louisville. My parents had lived right there a block away from us in Louisville. Well, they all passed away. And Susie and her husband, Jeff, were living in Broomfield, and they were going to buy land out here and have a house built. And so they got real excited about it. They loved the neighborhood, and what I'm finding out now is a lot of the kids from Louisville and Lafayette have moved into Erie and Frederick because you could get way, way more house and land for less money, even now. So that's where I run into people all the time, and they say, "Oh, our kids live in Frederick now, or our kids live in Erie now because
right.
It's too expensive to buy a house in Louisville." And so Susie called and said, "Are you going out looking for a house? Because we said we were going to move out of Louisville now that the parents were gone.
Yeah.
We could go get something someplace else and see the rest of the Boulder County or whatever." And she kept calling, "Come see what's out here. Come see what's out here." So she found this house for us.
So how long have you lived here in Frederick now?
We moved here in 2004 after Don's mom died. His dad died in 98. My mom died in 2002. My dad died in 2003, and his mom in 2004. So it was a rough 5-6 years there that we were constantly at either one of their houses helping with an emergency or taking them to the emergency room. So
what about your other daughter?
My daughter Carrie, she's amazing. She went to Front Range first, and then she went to CU in Boulder, and then she went to CU Denver because she didn't like the big classes at CU Boulder. She graduated in mechanical engineering. Her first job was as a forensic engineer, which was her long-term goal, what she wanted to do. And she did that for a couple of years, and she said, I don't like this. That wasn't her first job. Her first job was at Martin Marietta as a aerospace engineer. And she worked on the Titan missile project. And she really didn't like that. She said it was the end of the contract, and they weren't doing anything. It was boring.
See.
And so then she did this forensic engineering job for a guy that had his business right on Main Street in Louisville.
I don't know what forensic engineering is.
You take an accident and you do all of the math and drawings and everything to figure out what caused it. Why did this guy that was driving up this steep hill, why did end up rolling down like that, and so they do tests and videos and all kinds of stuff, and do the math and the angles. And,
end up with court cases, or
right,
or could,
and they support the court cases. Yeah, and so then she got laid off there, and she worked at the rec center for a while teaching gymnastics, and then she went to California, and she got a job working for the Department of Defense as an aerospace engineer. She worked on F-18. It was the F-18 fleet support for the Navy on Coronado Island, and she did that for 10 years. And then she met her husband there, and she wanted to live back close to home, close to family. And so he got a job at Fort Carson with the Army. And he was also doing the same job she was, only he's, do a different part of it. But he's an aerospace engineer. So he moved here, and they bought a house in Colorado Springs. But that job ended, the contract ended, and so he's back in San Diego. And she just started a new job with the U.S. Patent Office, and so she can telecommute as soon as she's had all her training and be wherever he is. But right now they're living in 2 different states. So they're really getting a lot of frequent flyer miles going back and forth. Every other week one of them travels. But yeah, we have amazing daughters. And sons-in-law that are just terrific, and grandkids that are just amazing. It's really great. We have a fun life.
Yeah. What a story from the beginning, from the family. And I want to know about, you have some other pictures here that we haven't seen. And so before we go on, you haven't shown us all. Where was the picture of the mining? I'd like to.
You know what? Yeah. This is the Louisville Lafayette Oil Company, or Coal Company is what it says on the back. And I don't know what mine is that. Don, do you know what mine that is? Yeah, he's standing there. Okay. Anyway,
hold it up though so she could.
Okay.
Are you going to try to get the picture of it? Yeah.
I believe I've seen this picture at the Louisville Museum.
All right.
I think you have this. But I was real surprised. I have the picture because my Uncle Gene is in it.
Okay.
Eugene Madonna.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you know what? I'm going to grab... Okay.
Wait a second and we'll get the picture and then...
Yeah. The other thing, Uncle Gene is right there. I don't know that you can get in that close, can you? Okay.
Yep, getting it.
Okay. And Fred Eberharder, who was my mom's stepdad, I had never seen his picture anywhere. And he is right here. And I had this picture for several years before I realized that he was in there. But I was looking at... Is it showing? Okay.
Well, somebody had put all those names on the back.
Yeah, what we've got here is names that everybody knows is Tom DiGilnardo, Rocco DeSantis, John Harney, Howard Kilker. I know so many of these names. Let's see who else. Frank Glastoka, Charlie Dewey, Camille Yoko, and my uncle Eugene Madonna. Who else? Tommy Roeder.
Does it have a date on it?
Laddie Lastoka. It does not have a date on it. Oh, wait. August 19th, 1942. I wonder how I got that date. It's written on the back.
Oh, somebody came up with it.
Okay, this must be the highway mine. Because these little signs in the front that they've got here, this one I can read, and it says, "Buy highway coal. Makes warm friends." Oh. Okay.
That wasn't too long before the mines were really giving out here, closing, because...
Well, No, that's not. Yeah,
a lot of
lots
people
of them
went
were.
to work for Rocky Flats in the 50s.
Lots of them went to work in
Yeah.
the 50s to
Yeah.
Rocky Flats. But
Yeah.
I still remember when we lived on Jefferson, so it was after 73, that when we had a really cold spell in the winter, we would go to the coal mine and get a 55-gallon drum of coal, and we'd burn coal in our fireplace. And it really warmed the house up.
And that was
I
in the,
remember one
in the
year
70s,
that's what,
huh?
yeah. I remember one year that's what Dad wanted for Christmas. Was he wanted a drum of coal to burn in his wood burning stove downstairs.
Wouldn't be able to do that these days, I guess.
I don't know. Is there a rule against it?
Well, I think the pollution, they not too happy with the burning of coal.
Well, they don't like you to burn anything in your fireplaces. They like it to be a gas fireplace now.
Yeah,
That's
right.
what we have. You flip a switch.
Yeah. Well, I think
Okay.
we're getting to the point where we're going to kind of move this into the kitchen
Okay.
and talk about some of these things that you have that we're
These
very
are the
anxious
things that
to
my grandpa
see.
Rocco Madonna
Yes.
made.
Yeah. So if that's okay, we'll close it off here.
Okay.
So Ricky, you have a lot of very interesting utensils here. Could you tell us about
These are my real family heirlooms.
Right.
This is probably my most prized possession. This is a guitar, a spaghetti cutter that my grandpa Rocco made for lots and lots of people in Italy and in Louisville. It is
Those are all wires in the middle?
okay. This is one strand of piano wire. And learning to make one of these, my brother learned that if you take a roll of wire and you get halfway done stringing it and it gets a kink, you have to take it all off and start over. So it took 6 or 8 of us all strung out across the room, holding on to it so it didn't get a kink in it while he was...
In order to string it.
Yeah, because you have to keep the tension the same or it doesn't work. And the way it works is you put this end against the edge of the shelf so that it can't slide around. You roll out a sheet of dough, of spaghetti dough. You put it on there, and then you use the rolling pin to roll up and down, and it all falls through there.
Does it come out in one piece or?
It comes out in spaghetti noodles. It's all cut.
Wow.
Yeah. And my fancy rolling pin is the kind that I learned to use from my grandma. It's a dowel. This was her rolling pin. She had a big round table downstairs.
Did she have long enough arms to use
She
it?
was shorter than I am. She was 4 feet 10 inches tall. Little tiny thing. When Grandpa built the house on Main Street, he made the kitchen cabinets. They hit you about here. They're very short. And she needed all of that. And her table, he cut the legs off the table, and the table was shorter too, that she worked on. And she would roll out this huge layer of dough.
Would they have brought some of these utensils from Italy, or
No.
So they would have made them here after they got here.
Yeah, he made them. He made all kinds of tools and stuff. Okay, the second. Well, I'll tell you about the pizzelles later. Okay, the second most precious thing in our family is a pizzelle iron, and my grandpa made pizzelle irons for lots and lots of people in Louisville, at least all the Italian people. When you wanted to put the dough in, you got this on your stove, and you put the dough in, put the little ball of dough in there, and then you clamp it together, and you hold it real tight, clear out here. And you got to have some sort of pot holder or something, because this is hot.
I was going to ask if it got hot.
Yeah, you got to use a towel or something like that. You cook it on the one side on your burner or your coal stove. Then you got to flip it over so the other side gets cooked, and then you drop the thing down and take it out with a fork. And
have you used it?
I have never cooked on this. My mother did. She had really strong arms. This thing's really heavy. So Mom went finally to a electric iron. But I never liked the pizzelles that came out of the electric iron, because to me, that's a cookie. What came out of this iron, you could poke the little holes out between the ridges, and so it had the thick and thin. And the closest I can come to that today is this little thing that I bought. And so I still cook one at a time on a burner, because the electric iron, in my opinion, those are different kind of cookies.
Mostly for the holidays.
You know,
Is that what
Mom and Dad finally decided that was the best thing to have in the house if company dropped in. And if somebody came and you wanted to send them home with something, pizzelles. You always have pizzelles on hand. And so she always had pizzelles. If you left their house, she sent 24 pizzelles home in a shoebox. It was the perfect size. At her memorial service, at her luncheon, at her funeral at St. Louis Church, we had really gathered together enough shoe boxes to put one on each table and filled them with pizzelles. But we didn't tell the ladies in the kitchen about it. And when we came out after the service, there were nice little plates with pizzelles on, and the shoe boxes were all back in the kitchen because they didn't know the significance of it. Well, right now I've decided that I don't do shoe boxes. I found something that works really, really good. And I make sure that I roll my balls of dough all the same size so they fit in the oatmeal box. And so there's my pizzelles.
Look at that.
And they have the wheat on one side and a little man and woman toasting on the other side, which is really cute. Grandpa did, when he did a pizzelle iron for a wedding gift, he would put their marriage date on it in their initials. And I went to Italy and I got my daughter one. It's shaped like this, but the blacksmith guy there, the ironwork guy, he put their initials on it.
What else do you have there?
We have buckets of these. All the different chisels used for stone carving. Rocco made Jimmy's tools. And so they have his initials on them. Grandpa put initials on everything, so you knew whose things were whose. Can you see these? Yeah, and so they're all different shapes to do different jobs, to cut different things. And I didn't know that we got rid of the mallet. I didn't know what it was. There were big wooden mallets that when you do stone carving, you hit those chisels with a wooden mallet.
I'm just really impressed that you have kept all these things. You have a storage room that you put them in?
10 seconds.
We have to close off.
Okay.
I'm really sorry, but this has been great.
Oh,
Thank
it was
you
wonderful.
so much, Ricky.
Thank you. I enjoyed it so much.
Okay.